I'm Howard Webb, the Executive Director of the Shigeru Nakamura Ryukyu Martial Arts Institute. This video is a summary explanation of Okinawa Kempo Kata as discussed in my book. Although I'm only explaining Kata from the Okinawa Kempo perspective, I believe my insights may give you a deeper understanding of your Kata if you're from another style. To truly understand Okinawa Kempo Kata, you must first correctly answer this question. What came first, the fighting system or the kata? To correctly answer this question, you must first define what constitutes a fighting system. Our fighting system is defined as a group of fighting skills, techniques, and principles that complement their execution as to operate in unison to create an effective response to an armed or unarmed attack in a wide variety of environments and situations. Considering the complexity of the elements that constitute our system of combat, it's safe to conclude that the fighting system existed before the kata were created or integrated. Now that I've established that our fighting system existed before our kata were integrated, the next question to answer is, why were kata developed? The development of Okinawan karate kata is rooted in the influence of Chinese martial arts, Okinawan culture, and combat reality. When Kempo was exported from China to Okinawa in the 7th century, the Chinese practice of formal exercises was adopted by its Okinawan practitioners. In addition, when Okinawan martial artists traveled to China to further their martial arts education, they continued the Chinese practice of kata training when they returned to Okinawa, eventually creating their own version of the previously learned Chinese formal exercises. Another important factor is the Okinawan practice of ancestor worship. As such, they respect and revere their ancestors for the knowledge that they have passed down to subsequent generations. This knowledge for many Okinawans includes instruction in their family martial art. Therefore, the practice of kata is a family tradition in Okinawan karate. Lastly, the practice of kata training in Okinawa karate is rooted in practicality. Kata as a training method has been proven effective in real combat. In feudal times, karate was Darwinian in nature. Effective techniques survived and ineffective techniques died with its practitioner. So only combat-tested techniques were integrated into kata. Sensei Oda was often quoted as saying, "Keep my kata straight." However, as with most elements of Okinawan karate training, there was never an explanation beyond the superficial. Okinawan Kempo karate students are taught the importance of not changing the kata because the techniques have been proven effective in combat. This message is emphasized to them through this traditional story. Quote, "Long ago, an Okinawan boy witnessed his father kill an opponent in combat using his family's system of karate. The boy was taught this system of karate by his father with this warning: do not change the techniques of our kata because you saw me kill them, so you know they are effective in combat. When the boy grew into a man, he taught his son the family system of karate, but he never used it in combat. He told his son, never change the kata in our family karate system, because I saw my father kill with it, so we know the techniques are effective in combat. When his son grew into a man, he taught his son the family karate system, but he too had never used it in combat. He told his son, never change the techniques in the kata of our family karate system, because your grandfather saw his father kill with his techniques, so we know they are effective in combat. And this family system of karate was passed on unchanged from generation to generation." End quote. The lesson: never change Okinawa Kempo karate kata, because the techniques have been proven in combat. As long as they remain unchanged, even though you have never used them, you can trust that they will be effective when you need them. As I explained in a previous presentation, only a very few in a generation are taught the system of fighting. When information is withheld, martial artists search for explanations to their unanswered technical questions. Because they lack knowledge of the topic, they rely on seemingly believable hearsay, or they form plausible assumptions. The following are the generally accepted falsehoods about our kata that are perpetrated by well-meaning but ill-informed sources. Myth 1. In the kata, you are fighting multiple assailants. False. Each kata contains within it different tactical maneuvers. Some 80-degree movements are performed so techniques can be practiced on both sides of the body. and/or to remind us that attacks do not always come from a frontal opponent. Some 45-degree and 90-degree movements are avenues of egress, throws, or used to move your body off the line of attack. However, there's one universal truth that proves this myth false. In the real world, multiple assailants don't attack in unison or in a predetermined order. True personal combat is dynamic and unpredictable. Therefore, prearranged defenses become ineffective because they prevent adaptation to the fluid circumstances of combat. Myth 2. The dangerous techniques of our pin-on kata were modified to be taught to school children. False. As I had previously explained, Grandmaster Nakamura modified the kata he learned in junior high school to conform with the Chinese Kempo fighting system. Further, the movements of kata without the knowledge of its fighting system are just blocks, kicks, and punches. You would never know that a two-handed grab at head level is a neck break if the neck break was never taught. As an example of this popular myth, quote, the Tasu removed the dangerous techniques from older kata to create the pin-ons for school children. For example, the forearm strike to the throat was replaced with a rising block, end quote. This is probably the most repeated misinformation about the modification of kata on YouTube. There are lots of karate instructors out there, or karate people, making this claim. From Okinawan Kempo has absolutely no validity. If this is the case, why not change all punches and strikes to blocks? A forceful reverse punch to the throat is as dangerous as a forearm strike to the throat and easier to deliver accurately. Think about it. In Okinawan Kempo, the techniques in the kata are independent cues to defensive and offensive tactics that are within our fighting system. Kata are coded textbooks, pieces of a puzzle picture where unless you are given the picture, the fighting system, you have no idea how they correctly fit together. Myth 3. The movements in kata create interconnected flowing combinations of blocks, paris, counter-strikes, kicks, throws, and joint locks. Again, false. If you hit an assailant in the face with a full power punch, or deliver a full power knee strike to the groin, he goes down. If your punch is ineffective or your knee strike misses, he fights back viciously with multiple punches and kicks. In either scenario, the assailant is not standing there like a statue letting you flow all over him. I just explained what kata are not, so now I'm going to tell you what they are. The reason for kata's inception is also the reason why it is so misunderstood by karate instructors and students. At some unknown point in martial arts history, a warrior decided to formalize his fighting techniques into a system of combat. As such, he needed a method to record and catalog his combat techniques and tactics in such a way that they could not be understood by those who would use this knowledge as a tactical weapon against him. Further, he needed a vehicle to pass on his martial knowledge to his designated successor in a manner that could only be deciphered by the anointed inheritor of his system. If he documented his tactics, techniques, strategies, and training methodologies in a physical textbook, his system of fighting could be stolen and duplicated. A martial genius who is capable of creating a system of unarmed combat that was undefeatable is fully capable of solving this problem. His solution? Develop a living textbook that catalogs and records his system of fighting that is so cryptic and unconventional that only a person who has learned his system of fighting can interpret it. Alexander Coe references this concept in his book, Five Ancestor Fist Kung Fu. Quote, what appear to be simple, basic movements in our forms are actually abbreviations of inner hidden movements, close quote. This living textbook is referred to by many different names, but in Okinawan karate, we call it kata. To use a modern analogy, our kata are intellectual martial arts computer programs. They are so unconventional and cryptic that they can't be hacked. They can only be accessed with a proper password, a password that is only provided to the worthy few in each generation. What makes kata so unconventional is that some techniques are as they appear to be, while others are not. For example, punches, strikes, blocks, and kicks appear simple, but their application within the system is undecipherable because of how they are conflictingly organized with each other and or with conflicting movement. This is by design. Imagine each independent technique combination as unrelated to the other, or as having conflicting applications. In doing so, you can understand why they are ineffective when used in their presented form. To more clearly understand this concept of conflicting composition, let's say you want to combine a series of technique fragments to act as cues for actual applications within your system of fighting. And you want these cues, when used in conjunction with each other, to be confusing and ineffective for those who aren't familiar with the underlying applications. How would you organize these fragments? You would mismatch the fragments, reverse movement directions, and camouflage subtle techniques within the movements of obvious techniques. Here's an example. Crescent forward step with a forward punch combination. This combination is found in a number of our kata. You cannot effectively attack or counterattack with a forward punch while using a crescent step. It's too slow. So why is it in our kata? Because the step-punch combination is comprised of fragmented cues for 3 different technique applications. First, the obvious technique, the punch. It is just that, and it can be used to attack or counterattack, but it is matched with an incompetent movement to make the punch ineffective. Second, the crescent step forward. This has cues for 2 technique applications. One is a defensive movement, the other a sweep. First, we'll talk about the defensive movement. As you stand in a left foot forward seisan stance, for those of you that know what a seisan is, it's a front stance. Reverse the step by bringing your front foot to your rear foot, so your knees are bent slightly and your feet are together. The application of this movement, you find yourself facing an opponent at a range that he can reverse punch you. As he makes the half step forward, you bring your front foot to your rear foot, feet together. This movement does 2 things. One, it moves your body away from his punch, but keeps you close enough to counterattack. And 2, it moves the center line of your torso to the right, making your left mid-level outward block more effective. Now second, the leg sweep. After you've assumed the above described position, feet together, and you have blocked his punch with your left arm, sweep his front leg with your left leg using the forward crescent step movement. The sweep will disrupt his balance and allow you to land an effective counterpunch. The previous examples, hopefully, have provided you with insights into kata as a living textbook for our fighting system. Most practitioners of karate do not reach the level of mastery necessary to learn the hidden meanings of kata techniques and movements. In the years that I have studied with Sensei Flores, I've only recently heard him use the term bonkai. He was explaining superficial applications of the movements of a kata at a conference. In the 30-plus years that I have trained with Sensei Flores, he has used the term tori when explaining our fighting system's technique applications encrypted in our kata. Sensei Oto used this term as well. Tori is Japanese for bird. Okinawan Kempo masters used the term as an analogy for the unseen fighting tactical applications in our observable kata techniques, cues. The analogy, when a bird flies, you only see his wings flap. But in reality, he's doing many things. His heart's pumping, he's breathing, he's looking for food and predators, etc. Using the concept of tori, when a kata is performed, the uninformed do not see the inner workings of the fighting system. This is how, when combat meant life or death, the warrior kept his fighting technique secret. The term bonkai is used by Okinawan karate masters when providing superficial explanations for the observable techniques in the kata. Sensei Oto would do this. Different American students at separate times would ask Sensei Oto how the same technique in a kata was used, and he would give each one of them a different answer. To one student, he would say, punch. To another student, he would say, block. And to another student, he would say, disarming technique. When these students came together to practice, they discovered that Sensei Oto had given each one of them a different explanation for the same technique. The student's conclusion, Sensei Oto is saying that the technique can be used for all tactical applications. In reality, Sensei Oto was saying 2 things. To the novice, you're not worthy of the tori explanation, but I'm going to give you an obscure explanation to satisfy your curiosity. To the advanced student, the movements in our kata are not necessarily as they appear. The movements in Okinawa Kempo kata are nuanced. Consequently, many of our kata's movements are very subtle and not easily observed when demonstrated by a knowledgeable sensei. A thorough comprehension of these nuanced movements are critical to the tactical application of our system. However, these subtleties are only taught to a few deemed worthy. This selective passive knowledge is due to the Chinese martial law influence that is infused in our system. To illustrate this point, I'll use my personal experience with being worthy. Sensei Flores had come to Oregon to train with me and my black belt students. I was performing kata when Sensei Flores stopped me and informed me that the move that I performed was incorrect. "This is how you taught me," I told him. "Yes, I know. I taught you wrong," he replied. "Why'd you teach me the wrong way?" I asked incredulously. "When I taught you kata, you were not worthy of the correct way. Why should I have taught you correctly when it has taken me a lifetime of training to receive it? After all these years of training, you have proved yourself worthy, so now I will train you in the correct way." Then he pointed to my black belt students and said, "But you can't teach them because they're not worthy." In all honesty, I was a little steamed over this revelation. I'd been performing our kata for over 10 years. Now I find out I was doing them incorrectly. Granted, the corrections were subtle, but they changed the movements and the tactical applications. I remember that conversation like it was yesterday, when in fact that lesson was given to me over 20 years ago. I've just begun to completely understand it. Recently I watched an interview with an 80-year-old Shorin-ryu master who discussed this. The master stated he was looking for a student that was worthy of learning the knowledge he possessed. The master confessed that his days were numbered, and if he did not find a student worthy of his advanced knowledge of the Shorin-ryu system, the knowledge would die with him. To the Western mind, the loss of such knowledge is a tragedy. To the Okinawan mind, it is honorable. The master was selected from many to receive such knowledge because of his dedication and sacrifice to his sensei's martial art. To do otherwise would dishonor his sensei, his martial art, and himself. Now, with that thought, I'll conclude my condensed explanation of our kata. I hope you found the presentation enlightening. Thank you for watching. Train hard. Until the next time.